The Galactic Empire had once been an unstoppable force, a monolithic presence in the universe. Their massive fleets traversed the stars with ease, crushing any resistance that dared to stand against them. With every passing day, more systems fell under their rule. Their fleets, a blend of unyielding ships and precision weapons, rendered any attempt at rebellion futile. Colonies across the galaxy succumbed to the Empire's might, their citizens silenced under the weight of the Emperor's iron fist. At the heart of the Empire, the Emperor's will was law. The ruling elite, composed of the Empire's most brilliant strategists and military commanders, saw their dominance as a natural order. To them, the galaxies were theirs to command, and any resistance, whether from distant species or the remnants of forgotten empires, was simply a temporary nuisance. The Emperor had designed their rule to be eternal, and their technological superiority was the cornerstone of this vision. Each fleet, each weapon, and each strategy had been refined over centuries to ensure total control. No species, no matter how advanced, had ever stood a chance. For years, the rebellion had been nothing but a fleeting irritation, quickly crushed by the Empire's overwhelming military might. Resistance forces were scattered, their leaders hunted down, and their hopes slowly dwindled. Every world that fought back had eventually been brought to heel. The Empire's agents had infiltrated even the deepest pockets of resistance, ensuring that nothing could stand in their way. Yet, despite the Empire's overwhelming dominance, there remained one thorn in their side: humanity. Earth, a relatively unknown planet on the edge of the galaxy, had become the center of resistance against the Empire's tyranny. It was considered by the Empire to be a minor nuisance, a backward species with no significant military power. Their technology was primitive, and their tactics were seen as chaotic, unsophisticated. They were no match for the precision of the Empire's war machine. At least, that was what the Empire believed. The human resistance had long been fragmented, their forces small and disorganized. They had no chance against the imperial might that systematically crushed every rebellion. Yet they held on, refusing to surrender, always looking for a way to strike back. The Emperor, confident in his supremacy, had ordered the complete eradication of all human resistance. With their military scattered and their homeworld under constant surveillance, humanity seemed destined for extinction. But the Empire had underestimated something they couldn't understand: the spirit of humanity. The heart of the human race beat with a relentless drive that no force could suppress. It was not the advanced technology of their enemies that worried them, nor the overwhelming fleets that they faced. No, it was something deeper. It was the will to fight for their home, for their future, for their freedom. That fire could not be extinguished. The Empire's strategic command, led by the Emperor's highest generals, had devised a final, all-encompassing plan to crush the human resistance once and for all. Their fleets would converge on Earth, deploying the full weight of their armadas. The human homeworld would be leveled, and with it, the final remnants of their resistance would be obliterated. There would be no escape, no place left for humanity to retreat. This would be the final chapter in their struggle. From the moment the Imperial fleet entered the sector, the humans knew the stakes were higher than ever before. Their intelligence networks, though limited, had managed to intercept some of the Empire's communications. They learned of the Empire's plans to send a full fleet to Earth, and that news galvanized the human resistance into action. Leaders from across the human colonies gathered to form a unified front, pooling their resources for one last stand. But despite their bravery and resolve, the human forces were vastly outmatched. The Imperial fleets were equipped with the latest advancements in warfare: energy weapons that could vaporize entire fleets in seconds, shields that were nearly impenetrable, and starships designed for speed and devastating firepower. In contrast, the human resistance relied on outdated equipment, makeshift weapons, and guerrilla tactics. They had no chance of matching the Empire's technological superiority in a head-to-head confrontation. The fate of humanity hung in the balance as the Empire's fleet moved closer to Earth. The human resistance made their preparations, but deep down, they knew the odds were insurmountable. Yet they fought on, determined to delay the inevitable. Each victory, no matter how small, was a testament to their willpower. The Empire may have the technology, but humanity had something the Empire could not fathom, a determination to survive at all costs. And that determination would soon prove to be their greatest weapon. In the cold silence of space, the human resistance made their last stand, knowing that this would be their final hour. The Empire, confident in their victory, failed to recognize that the greatest threat they faced was not just their technology, but the strength of the human spirit, which refused to yield, no matter how dark the road ahead seemed. The war, it seemed, was not yet over. The first sign of humanity's unexpected resurgence came without warning. The Imperial fleet, moving in perfect formation towards Earth, had expected little more than a few minor skirmishes before securing their final victory. They were wrong. The human Air Force, a force long underestimated, emerged from the shadows in a calculated, lightning-fast strike that caught the Empire off guard. This was no ordinary resistance. Humanity had evolved, adapted, and learned from their past failures. The days of being the underdog were over. For years, humanity had been fighting a losing battle. But in the depths of their desperation, they had forged something the Empire couldn't have anticipated, a highly trained, ruthless air force that operated with a unique blend of strategy and innovation. No longer relying solely on traditional methods of warfare, the human Air Force had begun to harness the one thing the Empire had failed to account for: improvisation. Their pilots had honed their craft in the harshest conditions, becoming masters of their ships and weapons in ways that were almost instinctive. Every move they made was calculated with an efficiency that spoke to their survival instinct. The initial wave of the human Air Force struck the Empire's lead fleet with surgical precision, using surprise and speed to their advantage. The Imperial fleet had always been known for its coordination and discipline, but humanity's fighters were unpredictable, darting through the chaos of battle with a relentless pursuit of destruction. The human ships, though outdated compared to the Empire's technologically superior vessels, were nimble and flexible, with pilots who could read a battlefield like no other. They attacked from angles no one expected, exploiting blind spots in the Empire's formations and hitting with overwhelming force before disappearing back into the void of space. The Empire, initially stunned by the boldness of the attack, scrambled to adapt. Their tactics, refined over centuries of conquest, had always relied on predictability. But these humans weren't following the script. Their fleet moved in fits and starts, never giving the Empire's commanders a clear target to focus on. The attacks were swift and relentless, forcing the Empire to waste resources chasing shadows. For the first time, the Empire's flawless coordination seemed to falter under the weight of humanity's chaotic brilliance. The human Air Force's strikes were not just a series of attacks, they were a statement. Each engagement, no matter how small, chipped away at the Empire's aura of invincibility. The Empire had never expected the humans to possess such resolve, let alone the ability to organize and execute operations with such skill. But humanity's Air Force was relentless, targeting not only Imperial ships but their communication lines, supply routes, and fleet command centers. The Imperial war machine, vast and powerful as it was becoming increasingly fragmented under the constant pressure from the human assault. The attack on the Imperial Command vessel marked a turning point in the conflict. A direct strike to the heart of the Empire's leadership left them scrambling for answers. This was no longer just a rebellion. It was a war that had escalated in ways the Empire could not control. What was once seen as a minor nuisance had now grown into a force capable of crippling the Empire's operations. In a matter of hours, the human Air Force had crippled several key Imperial fleets, and the losses were mounting. For the first time, the Empire was forced to reconsider its position in the war. Imperial commanders, once confident in their ability to squash the human resistance, found themselves facing a growing threat they didn't understand. The human Air Force's unpredictability was their greatest weapon. The Empire's fleets, designed for overwhelming force and precision, struggled to keep up with the hit-and-run tactics employed by humanity's fighters. They had anticipated a long, drawn-out war, one where their technological superiority would ultimately decide the outcome. Instead, they found themselves in a fight against an enemy who didn't play by the rules. In response, the Empire began to deploy reinforcements, sending in additional fleets to counter the human assault. But every time they made an advance, the human Air Force adapted, evolving their tactics to meet the new threat. Humanity's strength was in their ability to learn from their mistakes and grow stronger with each battle. The Empire, on the other hand, found themselves bogged down in a war of attrition that they had never expected. Their superior technology, once thought to be unbeatable, was becoming increasingly ineffective against the unpredictable tactics of the human Air Force. Despite their mounting casualties, the human Air Force showed no signs of slowing down. The pilots, driven by a deep-seated desire to protect their home world and their way of life, fought with a ferocity that sent shockwaves through the Imperial ranks. The Empire, accustomed to easy victories, was now fighting for its survival. For the first time in the war, the tables had begun to turn. Humanity's resolve, their refusal to be conquered, had turned the tide. The Empire, for all its might, could no longer dismiss humanity as a mere inconvenience. The war was now a genuine contest. The surprise strikes, the constant pressure, and the relentless assault from humanity had forced the Empire to confront the reality of the situation. They were no longer facing a weak, fragmented resistance. They were facing a determined, unified force that had found their strength and exploited the Empire's weaknesses. The human Air Force had turned the tide of the war in ways no one had thought possible. The battle for Earth had just begun, and the outcome was no longer certain. The Empire had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated humanity. And now they would pay the price. The human Air Force had established a reputation that no one, least of all the Empire, could ignore. Their attacks were no longer random or disjointed. They were meticulously planned, precise, and devastating. Each operation, each sortie, was a carefully crafted maneuver designed to target the Empire's most vulnerable points. The humans, now fully aware of their ability to outmaneuver the Empire, had begun to orchestrate a series of coordinated strikes that crippled the Empire's infrastructure. What had once seemed impossible now felt inevitable. Humanity was systematically dismantling the Empire's war machine. The human pilots, now veterans of countless battles, had perfected their craft. They had learned the value of patience, of waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Their attacks were no longer simple hit-and-run tactics. They were surgical, targeting not just the fleet but the Empire's command and control structures, its logistics hubs, and its communications networks. By disrupting the Empire's ability to communicate and coordinate, the humans had created chaos within the Imperial ranks. The once monolithic Empire now found itself fractured, with its fleet scattered and its commanders unsure of their next move. As the human Air Force continued to strike with ruthless efficiency, the Empire's response became increasingly erratic. Desperately trying to hold onto their crumbling empire, the Imperial commanders began to deploy larger, more powerful fleets to deal with the threat. But the human Air Force, now emboldened by their success, adapted once more. They targeted the Empire's new fleets with even greater precision, exploiting weaknesses that the Empire's leaders hadn't anticipated. The humans' ability to think on their feet, to exploit gaps in the Empire's defenses, was proving to be their greatest asset. The Imperial forces, now on the defensive, began to struggle with the constant pressure from humanity. What had once been a one-sided war was now a fight for survival. The Empire's overwhelming superiority in numbers and technology had been neutralized by the humans' ingenuity and adaptability. For every new fleet the Empire sent, the humans were able to disrupt its operations, breaking it down piece by piece. The Empire's commanders, once confident in their ability to crush humanity, were now forced to admit that they had underestimated their enemy. It wasn't just their tactics that set the humans apart, it was their strategic vision. The human Air Force was no longer simply reacting to the Empire's moves. They were setting the terms of engagement. By consistently striking at the Empire's weak points, the humans had forced the Empire to play defense, something they had never been accustomed to. The balance of power had shifted. The once feared empire was now a fragmented force, struggling to maintain control as their fleets and resources dwindled. The human leadership had anticipated the empire's next move, and they were ready. They knew that the empire would eventually regroup and attempt a full-scale counterattack. So, they planned accordingly, using the empire's own tactics against them. They created a series of false leads, misleading the empire's commanders into thinking they had identified a critical vulnerability. When the empire's fleets converged on the perceived target, the human air force struck from an unexpected direction, catching the empire off guard once again. Every move the empire made was met with calculated resistance. Their ships, once the most advanced in the galaxy, were now vulnerable to the humans' hit-and-run tactics. The human air force had begun to use the empire's own strength against them, luring them into traps and exploiting their overconfidence. It was as if the empire's commanders had forgotten how to fight a war against an opponent who didn't play by the rules. Humanity had taken their flaws and turned them into weapons. The battle for dominance was no longer about technology alone. The humans had leveled the playing field. Their ability to adapt, to improvise, and to anticipate the Empire's moves had thrown the Imperial forces into disarray. The Empire, with all its technological prowess, now found itself losing the war not to a superior force, but to a force that refused to quit, refused to be defeated. The Empire had underestimated humanity's willpower, and now they were paying the price. As the war dragged on, the human air force continued to break down the Empire's defenses, each attack more devastating than the last. The Imperial fleets, once proud and invincible, were now fragmented and disorganized. Their commanders, caught in a cycle of constant retreat, began to lose morale. The Empire's once formidable presence in the galaxy was now a shadow of its former self, and the human air force had played a central role in its downfall. But the fight was far from over. The Empire still had a vast arsenal at its disposal, and its leadership was determined to strike back. Yet the humans were ready. They had learned the Empire's patterns, its tactics, and its weaknesses. Every day, they grew stronger, more coordinated, and more capable of taking on the Empire's vast war machine. The balance of power had tipped irrevocably in humanity's favor. The Empire had underestimated them, and now they would see firsthand just how dangerous the human spirit could be. The Empire's frustration was palpable. Their commanders had long prided themselves on their ability to predict their enemies' movements, to crush any resistance that dared to challenge their rule. Yet, in the face of humanity's relentless strikes, they were left scrambling. The once proud Imperial forces were now a fractured, vulnerable shell of their former glory. The human air force had proven that, no matter the odds, humanity could not be defeated, not by technology, not by numbers, and certainly not by arrogance. With every victory, humanity grew more confident. The Empire's once imposing presence in the galaxy was now a thing of the past. The humans had not only held their ground, but they had turned the tide of the war. The Empire, for all its resources and power, had failed to account for one thing: the unwavering determination of humanity to fight, to survive, and to win. The final stages of the war saw humanity's victory grow increasingly certain, but the Empire was far from surrendering. Its forces, though crippled by the relentless pressure from the human air force, were not yet defeated. The remnants of the Imperial fleet, though scattered and struggling to regroup, still maintained a formidable presence. Yet, the humans knew the Empire's last hope lay in one final, desperate push. With their warships and starfighters, they would make one last attempt to crush the rebellion and secure their rule. The Empire, in its desperation, began to pool its remaining resources for a final assault on Earth. This last stand would be their greatest, the one last chance to wipe out humanity and restore their dominance. They concentrated their remaining fleets, combining their most powerful warships and most experienced commanders into a single, massive fleet. This would be the attack that would crush the human resistance once and for all. Or so the Empire hoped. But humanity had seen through the Empire's plans. Their intelligence networks, though modest, had once again proven invaluable. The humans knew that this attack would be their final battle, and they prepared for it with the same calculated precision that had won them every other skirmish. The human Air Force had become more than just a group of pilots. They had become a force that could read the enemy, anticipate their moves, and strike before the Empire even realized what was happening. The Empire's final assault was devastating in its scope. Thousands of ships, heavily armed and ready for battle, surged toward Earth, their weapons charged and ready to fire. It was a display of raw power, the Empire's full might converging on a single point in space. The human Air Force, though vastly outnumbered, had learned to make every shot count. They knew that this battle would not be won with sheer numbers, but with strategy, precision, and a refusal to surrender. The human pilots, knowing the stakes, flew with unmatched ferocity. They attacked with everything they had, hitting the Empire's ships from unexpected angles, exploiting weaknesses they had spent months learning. The Empire, despite its overwhelming firepower, was once again caught off guard by the humans' ability to outthink and outmaneuver them. Every battle the Empire fought felt like a trap. Every time they tried to regroup or retaliate, the human Air Force struck harder. The Empire's commanders, now desperate, attempted to regain control of the battle, but their forces were too scattered. The humans were everywhere, attacking from every direction, exploiting every vulnerability in the Imperial fleet. Each time the Empire tried to push forward, they were pushed back, each attempt met with fierce resistance. The human pilots, driven by the knowledge that this was their last chance to protect their world, fought harder than they ever had before. In the midst of the chaos, the humans made one last, decisive move. They launched a coordinated assault against the Imperial Command vessel, the flagship at the center of the fleet. It was a bold move, but it was also their most calculated. The human Air Force knew that if they could eliminate the leadership of the Empire, they would break their enemy's will to fight. It was a risk, but it was a risk worth taking. As the human ships descended on the Imperial flagship, the battle became a blur of destruction. Explosions rocked the Empire's fleet as human fighters weaved through enemy fire, relentlessly targeting the command vessel. The Empire's defenses, though formidable, were not enough to withstand the human assault. The human pilots, showing unmatched skill and precision, tore through the flagship's defenses, breaking through the outer hull and plunging into the heart of the vessel. The Empire's command center was in chaos. Their leaders, once confident in their superiority, now realized that their fate was sealed. The humans had done the unthinkable. They had disrupted the Empire's leadership, their communications, and their ability to respond to the battle. The Empire's once unbeatable fleet was now in disarray, its leaders powerless to stop the destruction of their war machine. With the Empire's command structure in disarray, the remaining Imperial ships began to falter. The human Air Force, seeing their opportunity, pressed the attack. The Empire's fleet, already stretched thin, began to fall apart. The humans, relentless in their pursuit of victory, pushed forward, destroying the remaining Imperial vessels one by one. By the time the dust settled, the Empire's fleet was nothing more than a smoldering wreck, scattered across the vast expanse of space. Earth had been saved, but the cost had been immense. The human Air Force had given everything in their final stand. Thousands of pilots had fallen, their ships reduced to debris, but their victory was undeniable. The Empire had been shattered, and humanity had emerged victorious against all odds. The battle for Earth was over, but the war had changed the course of history. The Empire, once the dominant power in the galaxy, was no more. The humans had proven that even the most powerful empire could be defeated, not by superior technology or overwhelming force, but by determination, innovation, and the unyielding will to survive. The human race had shown the galaxy that they were a force to be reckoned with, and no empire, no matter how great, could ever truly extinguish the fire of humanity's spirit. The war had ended, but the legacy of humanity's victory would live on. The galaxy would never be the same again. The Empire's once unshakable hold on the stars was broken, and the humans had shown the universe that they were capable of achieving the impossible. No longer would they be seen as a minor nuisance. Humanity had proven, once and for all, that they were a force to be reckoned with, ruthless, unyielding, and willing to fight to the last breath for their freedom. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson: never underestimate humanity.